back to Amanda's Bookish Adventures. I am going to be talking about, I noticed on Goodreads it said what genres I read, and then I thought about, before I found Goodreads and before I found BookTube, what kind of books I read. So I thought we could discuss that and what genres I read now. So I used to just read romance and YA novels. I never went to adult novels, fantasy novels. If it was a fantasy, I would read it as a romance or a YA. Never went to middle grade, and I never went to adult books. So my reading has definitely changed. I would say I got started into the middle grade genre is when I found Jade's channel and Gav's. That is when I started reading middle grade. But with the channel and all their friends, that's also how I started reading other genres. I just love the romance genre and I love the YA genre. I just never stepped outside of it. I did used to read manga, and I'm getting back into that, reading more manga and graphic novels. But it's funny because like 4 years ago, before I had Goodreads, I started finding BookTube, and that's when I started changing my reading, or like new books would be talked about, and I was like, oh, let me see if my library has that, or oh, that sounds so good enough I have to get it. And it's been really fun. My journey on reading has really absolutely changed. Let me tell you what genres Goodreads says. It says I read adult fiction, book club, chick lit, children's, contemporary, ebook, erotica, fantasy fiction, graphic novels, historic fiction, manga, paranormal, romance, science fiction, and young adult. I used to hate sci-fi when I was younger, in my early 20s, and even in high school. The book had sci-fi. I absolutely hated it. But as I've gotten older, I have really loved sci-fi. There isn't much dystopian on here. The only dystopian I read was the Hunger Games series. I think that's dystopian. And that's still beloved to me. I haven't read the new book, the prequel novel. If you're gonna do a prequel novel, I can't remember. I want Peeta and Katniss's coach. I can't remember his name on the top of my head. It's been a while. I'm gonna do another reread next year because I love reading that series every year. But I want a prequel novel of his Hunger Games. I think that would have been an amazing prequel novel if you're gonna go back into that world. Contemporary, I would only read like YA contemporary, but when mass market paperbacks or Harlequin, that's the only contemporary I read. But when the romance genre started getting illustrated covers, that is when I got into adult contemporaries. I love adult illustrated covers. If the book has an illustrated cover, I either own it, or I'm going to get it, or I have read it from the library. Illustrating cover is like, I know it's kind of a trend. It's been around for a couple of years now, but it's so beautiful. Illustrated fantasy novels, like the cover on those, like on, I think it's Skyward, which I'm going to be rereading soon. I love that. I love those covers. It started getting to be really fun reading other genres. I was getting sick of just reading romance because it gets repetitive. You have all these tropes. When I started stepping outside of the YA and the romance genre, I never read a Brandon Sanderson novel. My brother for years would have been like, you need to read Brandon Sanderson. You would love Brandon Sanderson. No, it's too big or too long. I used to read books like this big, and now I'm reading like books this big. And it's very surprising how much of big books I'm reading. I'm like reading 2 to 3 a month now, and I'm enjoying having longer stories or reading a longer series with the same characters, even with fantasy romances, because I normally, if I read a romance, I would only read one book and then I wanted to move on. But I'm actually starting to like From Blood and Ash and the Court of Rose and Thorn series, reading from those characters from the same book and seeing how their story gets developed. And then when you hit that finale, I have more peace with it now. Having such a long book series, or even romance, or even a big book series, I'm loving these big worlds, and I'm loving really, I'm really loving high fantasy lately. That has become one of my favorite genres, but I love going into these worlds, or like the books have a second era and you go back and you have new characters, but you're in the world, but seeing how it's changed, for sure. I'm really excited to keep reading the Mistborn series because I'm on the second book and I need to read more of his books, but I'm going back and reading Skyward and reading the new sci-fi, and I'm reading some of his other books this month or in the next couple months, but I want to get to the second era of the Mistborn series. I'm so excited for the second era. And the maps, like in a fantasy book, I love the maps and like what you start with. I've never, like, even reading adult fantasy, I was very scared. Like, there was only, I don't even remember which one I started. I think it was probably at Brandon Sanderson. And there was 700 pages. I was nervous because I was like, I get bored in books. Like, I want the content to be straight through. I don't want to get a part of the book and I'm bored. That's just so, but Brandon Sanderson, and I'm excited to start Robin Hobb because she's got a long series. And I want to start reading more. I'm actually really excited for some of the releases that is coming out next year because they started showing covers on Goodreads, and I'm like, that makes, sometimes with books I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna pick it up because of a cover. Before Goodreads, if it was, I would buy sequels and read the sequel, and I'm like, this is not making sense when I was in junior high. So I started, when phones came out, before I found Goodreads, I went to Amazon to make sure it was not a sequel. I just go by publishing date, and I would say Goodreads has helped in that aspect because I know the order of the books to read in. I got cut off. I had to take my little dog out. What I was going to say after that clip was I'm also getting really more into queer books. I'm dyslexic. I can't say the whole community's name without sounding stupid. Like, legit, I can't say it without messing it up. So queer and sapphic. I'm really loving sapphic books. But queer contemporaries and sci-fis and stuff has been one of my favorite genres to get into lately. And I'm so excited for next year's releases. They look so good, and I just want to have them now, and in a couple of months we will have them, so I'm definitely looking forward to them. But I guess that's really it in this video. What kind of books over the years was the genre you stuck to, and what are the genres now that you are reading more than the genre you used to? Let me know down below in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!